Welcome into One of One Sports, the only one for your original sports commentary and analysis. I'm John Barry, back with another college football video, and today we're going to be ranking all 14 Power 4 coaching hires this coaching cycle. Let's get into it. Before we get started, I have to ask you guys, if you're enjoying the content on the channel, we've had recruiting news, we do rankings, we cover games, predict them, react to them, all sorts of college football stuff, and we're getting into more college basketball stuff, NBA stuff, any type of sports fan, basketball or football, there's stuff here for you. And if you enjoy that, make sure to leave a like, subscribe. I'm trying to hit 300 subscribers before the end of the college football season. We're getting really close, 19 away. I need your guys' help to get there. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Disclaimers before we get started. We got 3 of them. These coaches are not going to be ranked in a vacuum, right? It's not, a ranking of how good I think these coaches are. It's circumstantial. So did you get a coach better than who I think you could have got? That bakes into it. If you're a premier job like LSU and you had a lot of options and you hired someone I don't think was the best option, not saying I think that about Lane Kiffin, but say LSU had hired Pat Fitzgerald, I would have been like, well, really? Right? So the kind of like who you could have gotten versus who you did get, that's going to play into it. How set up or how well set up they are to succeed. So if I like the coach, but they don't have any resources, I probably don't think they're going to do very well. So there's a lot of factors playing into this. It's not just a ranking of the 14 coaches in order of how good I think they are, right? That's not what this is. And then take it with a grain of salt. These are, of course, predicting long-term things that are going to be hard to know. If we look back to the crazy coaching cycle a few years ago where, LSU took Brian Kelly and USC took Oklahoma and Miami took Mario Cristobal. Like at the time, maybe you guys disagree. I thought Lincoln Riley, he's winning everything at Oklahoma. Huge home run hire for the Trojans. And I'm not saying it's been a bad. He's got number 1 recruiting class now. Things are looking up. But of course, it has been disappointing to this point in his tenure. So I'm just saying anything is possible. I wouldn't have thought Dan Lanning would turn into maybe a top 5 coach in the country at the time when Oregon hired him. So just be open-minded, and it's a long-term prediction. We don't know anything for sure. Let's start at 14, and of course, this is Penn State. Who's hired? Nobody. We're past signing day. This has been a total abject failure by the Nittany Lions, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. When you first fired James Franklin, I wasn't even that mad at it. Sure, he'd been very successful, but I understood the complaints. You wanted to be great, not good. You didn't think he could get you there. You lost all the big games. Now you were losing games to really bad teams as 20-point favorites. I understood all of that, and I was like, okay, you can fire him, but not if you have no plan. You have to hire somebody, and you've hired nobody. We're past signing day. You've tanked the recruiting class that's now 150th in the country. You're behind the likes of Cal Poly, Harvard, Delaware. You're 1 spot above Prairie View, A&M in the recruiting rankings. It's a complete embarrassment by Penn State football. And on top of that, you're missing on all the coaches. You got Keilani Sitake staying at BYU due to crumble cookie. It's a complete and utter failure by the Penn State administration. Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty harsh, but I mean, that's just what it is. You've thrown away next year for Penn State. You're going to be bad because even if you get who are you going to, if Terry Smith, okay, then why didn't you hire him sooner? Kalen DeBoer, not going to leave Alabama. I don't know who you're bringing in. You're not going to have good recruits. I don't know what you're going to do in the transfer portal. No one believes in this program right now. So yeah, we're going to be national title contenders. Well, guess what? Now you might miss a bowl game next year. You're not going to be good. You've hurt the very near future of Penn State. And right now, the future outlook, I mean, there is no future outlook. I don't know what to grade. You don't have a coach. This is just, it's ridiculous what Penn State has done. And to get rid of a coach as successful as James Franklin was, and I understood it, but you can't get rid of someone that successful unless you know you have some sort of plan. Even if it's like a swing. Like if you had gotten Keilani Sitake, I wouldn't have said is a better coach than James Franklin, but you'd say maybe, right? Someone with a chance where you think maybe he can perform better. Like if you hired Brent Key, who's proven to be really good in these big game scenarios, right? Now he may lose a game here to Illinois or Washington. You get my point, but you're a little bit better in the big games. Then I would understand something, but you've got nothing. You've got nobody and you got no recruits. And I can't emphasize how bad this has been. It's unbelievably bad. I never thought I'd be saying this. At the time when you fired James Franklin, the thought is you fired him early to get a head start on other teams who would be firing coaches. You start your coaching search earlier, you'll hire earlier. You'll be prepared for signing day and the transfer window, the end, all the things that come at the end of the college football season. And instead, you're behind everyone. Somehow, you've managed to mess every single thing up along the way. A clear, very clear 14. At 13, I'm going to go to Vita Pritchard to Stanford. And look, I got to be honest here, I was not very familiar with Mr. Pritchard, and he played quarterback at Stanford while I was approximately 0 to 3 years old. So, never saw him play, of course. And then he worked on the staff for a while, was OC at one point. But that was before I was really into knowing offensive coordinators, all that. So I wasn't really familiar with him. But look, the track record is decent. He's worked with a lot of decent talent. You look at the NFL, he's just the quarterback coach of the Washington Commanders. Of course, Jaden Daniels has been one of the better quarterbacks over there. And at Stanford, he was OC when you had guys, I don't remember which ones exactly, but like when you went through the Kevin Hogan, Tanner McKee, Davis Mill era, like he worked with those quarterbacks. He worked with guys like Walker Little, Bryce Love, some of the really talented players Stanford had under David Shaw. And he's obviously very familiar with the program, which means he's also going to know the limitations they have, not only academic recruiting standards, but a seemingly substantial lack of investment from a pretty wealthy donor base. They just don't seem to have an interest in football. It's almost like the Stanford alumni who are, very successful, great school, hard to get into, so they have all these great jobs. It looks like it appears from the outside, they kind of look down on donating to a football program. And Stanford cares so much about so many other sports. They will care about men and women's soccer. No knock on soccer, but they'll care about like the rowing team. They'll care about pretty much every sport at the university that doesn't make any money, right? That's just the truth of what Stanford does. They'll have a ton of national titles and things that you and I may say, why would anyone care about that? It doesn't matter, but they do, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it really decreases the value of the job and just makes Pritchard's job so much harder on him. And that's why, like I said earlier, these things aren't in a vacuum. I think he's going to have a tough time, not because I necessarily think he's not a good coach. I don't know if he's a good coach. I don't really know how I think he would do at a better position. But Andrew Luck kind of went with the safe hire, someone who knows Stanford. But I think there's too many limitations on this job right now to put him any higher. And look, if he was hired by, I don't know, what's a job higher up on this list? We'll talk about it later, but there are jobs where I think he could have a higher where he would have been ranked higher. Stanford right now, I don't consider a very good job in college football. And I think that's a problem. I really do. I think he's going to have a tough time. All right, number 12, I'm going with Pat Fitzgerald to Michigan State. And I don't know if this is controversial or not to not have him higher, but there's a couple reasons why he's so low. First, it's the circumstances at Michigan State. This is a school that's going to be on probation for like 3 years because of the eligibility thing. So right now, I don't think they were already not looking well set up to succeed after Jonathan Smith took over. Really, or Mel Tucker had one good year because of the transfer portal. But outside that 1 year, since Mark D'Antonio, right? It's been Mark D'Antonio. Maybe I'm getting his name wrong. Correct me if I am. But I think Mark D'Antonio. They've struggled with Mel Tucker. They struggled with Jonathan Smith. So I already didn't have a high opinion of the job. Now you add these sanctions with the probations. I don't like the vibe around the program right now. And I also think people, because of the messy exit Pat Fitzgerald had with the scandal that ended up, he got cleared of all that, right? Kind of forget, like the end of the Northwestern tenure wasn't great either. He wasn't exactly lighting it up there. So yes, he had some really good years at Northwestern, worked with Les, but he also had some years where they weren't very good. And I kind of lean more towards like maybe he gets Michigan State to 6 wins, but I think not Northwestern. I think Michigan State is still going to have a lot of the same struggles, especially when you're going to compete. When you're going to compete with the Michigans, the Penn States, Ohio States, you're going to get them a lot of years. The Big Ten competition level keeps increasing. Programs keep getting better. USC is getting better. It's just hard place to win right now. So yeah, Pat Fitzgerald's going to come in at 12. Number 11, I'm going with Pete Golding to Ole Miss. So of course, the Rebels lost Lane Kiffin to LSU. Obviously, that coaching hire is going to be higher up on this list. And I don't know if I said earlier, this is only Power 4 coaching jobs. I think I did, but just in case I didn't, no Brian Hartline to South Florida here. But anyways, part of the problem I have with the Pete Golding hire, well, there's two really, maybe three. One, I just don't know if he was that good of a defensive mind in the first place, and you hire a defensive coach, I want them to at least think that they can be elite on that side of the ball. He wasn't good enough for Alabama, really. He was mediocre at Ole Miss, so I don't really even love him as a defensive coordinator, let alone head coach. So that's one of the major problems. The second is even if he was a great defensive mind, I don't always love, it'd be a drastic pivot from Lane Kiffin, offensive genius, to Pete Golding, defensive mastermind, if he was even that. But like top of the sport level offensive play caller, Lane Kiffin, at least that's the regard I hold him in. A lot of people hold him in. So one of the best premier offensive minds to an average, slightly above average defensive guy. I'm not sure I love the transition there as well. And then the third problem, before I get into some of the positives, because this sounds all negative at the start, but it's just because I feel like people are going to think this is too low. The third problem is just that Ole Miss, I do think, has turned into a really good job. And I just think there are better candidates out there, and they settled for someone internally. Maybe they really thought he was the guy. I just thought there were better candidates they could have went outside for. And I understand it's a tough spot when your coach leaves kind of suddenly and you're in the playoff. You got to do something quick. So I understand it. But long term, I'm not sure that it was the best move. Now, some of the things I do like, the players seem to really back him. And I think it's always good to have the buy-in of the players. The only problem is these players aren't necessarily going to be around the longest. A lot of them will run out of eligibility, and it's going to be what can Pete Golding do to bring in new recruits. And we don't know that yet. Of course, I don't know how good of a recruiter he's going to be or what staff he can assemble to see if they continue this offensive pace. And I think it's going to be huge for him. Like, he's got to put some really good people around him, and to have that much pressure on you to do that, I think it's going to be difficult, especially with all these jobs that come open in Florida and LSU or Arkansas, Auburn, also in your conference. Like, you're going to be competing for a lot of spots. Charlie Weiss is going to leave to LSU. So you're going to have some big shoes to fill on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know how he's going to necessarily handle getting the right people in there. And I don't know if Ole Miss will still have the same level of transfer portal success that they have had under Lane Kiffin. I don't know that he can do those same type of things. So I think it's a big downgrade from Lane Kiffin. And I think there were potentially better candidates to replace him, but because of the nature of Kiffin's exit, they were put in a really tough spot. And Pete Golding, I'm not saying he won't be successful, but I do expect, personally, Ole Miss to not be like they've had their best 3-year run in program history under Lane Kiffin. Logic tells me it's probably coming back down now that that guy's gone. I don't think you just fill those shoes like that. I think it's going to be, not you missing bowl games or anything, but I think you will take a step down. I know Rebels fans aren't going to like that. That's just my prediction. But other fans, let me know, is this the vibe around Pete Golding, or do people think he's going to be more successful than I do? To the top 10, at 10, I'm going Arkansas hiring Ryan Silverfield. And this one's tough because, Arkansas thought they were going to have Alex Golesh, who is higher on this list. You'll see where later, and then has to end up pivoting because Auburn takes Alex Golesh. And I like Ryan Silverfield. There's a couple things I really like about this hire. One, I think he's an underrated coach at Memphis. Like, he's consistently beaten some of the guys that are going, some Rawls and Golesh, these guys getting the premier jobs. Like, Silverfield's beat them a lot at Memphis, and while they haven't made maybe getting 10-win seasons, they get those 8-win, 9-win seasons consistently, and he just beat you at Arkansas. So Memphis, right next to Arkansas, going to be recruiting a similar area, familiar with the region, has been successful at a good program in Memphis. So I like a lot about Silverfield as a coach, and I think he's a bit of an underrated hire. But Arkansas has some really, really big issues. There's a reason a lot of coaches turn them down. There's a reason, like Eric Morris was reported to turn them down. There's a reason Golesh pivoted. It's a really, really tough place to win right now. People don't necessarily believe they can get all the financial investment from the big donors. People have talked about all the big ifs involved in the job, and those haven't been aligned for a little while now. And Ryan Silverfield, I think, is going to need a lot of help because Arkansas right now, just to be honest, like, you are maybe the bottom of the pecking order in the SEC. Maybe you're ahead of a Kentucky, of a Mississippi State, but Vanderbilt's probably past you. We know all the other programs have been better than you for the most part. So you have to climb. And while I think Ryan Silverfield is a good coach, what he's going to be dealing with in terms of probably a lack of resources, at least at the start, transitioning to a tough place to win, I think you need a great coach. So while I like the hire, give it about a B minus, a B. I don't think it's this slam dunk home run where you can turn around the program instantly. I don't feel that way. And if they give him time, I think he can build it up. But programs now are so impatient where I just don't know that he's going to get there, and he comes in at 10. Because if it was in a vacuum, I do think I'd have him higher. I like him as a coach, think he's underrated. The situation he's hired into knocks it down a little bit for me, if that makes sense. And at number 9, I'm going with Spoilers. Reveal 9 and 8, I guess. Number 9, I'm going with Colin Klein to Kansas State. 8, I'm going with Tosh Lupoi to Cal. Man, I had to reveal it. All right, so let's talk Colin Klein first. This was shocking to me. Chris Klieman retiring, didn't see it's coming at all. Seems like the program did it as like he told them in advance a little bit, but it seemed like they were pretty caught off guard. But to do this coaching search as fast as they did, I think was really, really, just impressive, right? And I'm sure they had this in the works because Klieman gave him a little bit of a heads up. They were like, hey, Colin, would you be willing to take a job? You worked at OC here. You played quarterback here. would you like to do that? And he said, yes. And he took the job. Hey, it's great. And first time head coach, you never know for sure how it's going to work out. But like I talked about Tavita Pritchard, I do think it's sometimes a benefit to be familiar with the program. Of course, playing quarterback there, being a Heisman finalist, he knows what it's like then. And then being an OC, he knows what it's like then as well. Modern and past versions of Kansas State, cares about the program a lot. I do think that can be an advantage and help you in things like recruiting and relating to players and overall just getting the investment and buy-in of the fan base. I think all those things can really help Colin Klein. And what I think can also really help him is he's just a good offensive coordinator. He's been good at Kansas State. He's been good at Texas A&M. Now, is he thought of as the best offensive coordinator in the country? Is he going to be up for the Bros Award? No, probably not. But I would say Marcel Reed has clearly benefited from playing in Colin Klein's system. A&M and those receivers have looked really good. So if he can get the talent in there, and Kansas State is not lacking for talent. Like Avery Johnson can do most of what Marcel Reed does if he comes back and can improve with Colin Klein at coordinator. And they have Lincoln Cure, 5-star tight end, going to get better in his sophomore season. You can get some receivers. I think he can put together a pretty successful offense pretty immediately. And Kansas State can be a really good team in the Big 12. I do really like the hire for Kansas State. But as you see, I like a lot of these hires from this point on, starting with Tosh Lupoi. And I mean, it's pretty simple here. I think there's been a strategy that maybe it doesn't always work, but when it does work, it can pay massive dividends. So hiring the DC of Dan Lanning, can he be the next guy? It's a huge swing. It's a boom or bust type thing. Same with when Oregon hired Dan Lanning from Kirby Smart, or when Georgia hired Kirby Smart from Nick Saban. You take the guy, their sort of protege on their side of the ball, and can they kind of replicate what they did? And Smart did it for Saban, and Lanning kind of did it for Smart. And of course, there are tons of examples where this doesn't work out. But if you're Cal and you fire Justin Wilcox, who, for the record, I thought was having a decent year, didn't think they would fire him, 6-5. I know he lost to Stanford, but still, he made a bowl game, had some young talent. Sagapole Telly could be back next year. Could be. We'll see about the transfer portal. But, I thought they would keep Wilcox. But if you're not, then I do think Cal's the type of program that should take a swing. And I think Tosh Lupoi is that exact type of guy because he's seen the success that Dan Lanning's had. He's seen what it looks like, how to build that with the steps Dan Lanning takes, the habits, the goals, all of it. He's been there in the room learning all this stuff. And if he can apply that, Cal could thrive for it. And let's move on to number 7 here because it is Oregon's other coordinator, OC Will Stein, who goes to Kentucky. And I think it's a really, like all the talking points, you can translate them pretty much to Kentucky with one exception, right? With it being the other side of the ball. But all I said about Tosh Lupoi seeing success, knowing what it's like, the same thing applies for Will Stein. He also, he's from Kentucky, huge Kentucky fan. So I think the fans are going to really buy into that. And then the advantage Will Stein has on the offensive side of the ball is he seems to be sort of a quarterback whisperer. You look at the success he had with Dante Moore, who struggled at UCLA as a freshman, came to Oregon, developed. He's been great. You look at what Dylan Gabriel there. I think he was there with 1 year of Bo Nix and even improved upon what Kenny Dillingham had did. And the other thing Will Stein has going for him is Kenny Dillingham from this same situation got this rep of sort of what Will Stein has. He did really good with Bo Nix as a coordinator. Then he got the head coaching job at his alma mater. It's a really similar thing for Kentucky. And just like Tosh Lupoi, you're kind of taking a swing. First time head coach, you never know how it's going to work out for sure. But when you get a guy who has a track record of being good with quarterbacks, who's been on very successful teams, who's worked under Dan Lanning, seen what success has looked like for an Oregon team that's been a Big Ten champion, it's been a number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff, all of that, I think it is a swing worth taking, even though they're another team. Like I wouldn't have fired Mark Stoops, especially for that amount. I thought he was a pretty good coach, and he had some really good years at Kentucky, so I wouldn't have fired him. But if you are, I think it's a program, when you're at the bottom of the pecking order in the SEC, you've got to take a swing. Can you find the next big thing, the next big guy? Will Stein could absolutely be that. I think it's as good of a chance as any. I think it is a great hire for Kentucky. Number 6, I've got Bob Chesney to UCLA. I would give this an A. Love the hire. And it's because, yes, I am swayed a little bit by everyone. Could he be the next Kirk Cignetti, Kalen DeBoer type where, yes, their track record is a bunch of really small programs like Holy Cross. I'm forgetting even the other one, but low level D2, D3 type programs and make their rise in the ranks. because they just know how to win football games. And yes, maybe he hasn't proven it on the biggest stage, but he's been great. He's been great every stop, whether it was James Madison, Holy Cross, wherever he was before that, which I can't even remember the school name. But he's been successful everywhere, and I think we are seeing guys who are just good football coaches, the Kirk Cignettis, the Kalen DeBoers. They can figure it out, and they can continue their success because they have a formula that works. And in UCLA's case, you're going to have to work with a little bit less. Like on paper, UCLA, you're in Los Angeles, one of the premier recruiting hotbeds in the country, tons of perimeter skill talent on a base that should be pretty wealthy. But UCLA, kind of similar to Stanford, doesn't invest the most. They invest more in basketball often than football, and they just haven't been a recruiting power, and they play at a stadium that's off campus. There's just a lot of weird things about the UCLA football program where on paper you think, oh, that's a pretty good job, and it's just never been that. So I think Chesney has to work with less, but he's a guy I think can absolutely do that and be very successful. And I also think he should have been given a better opportunity. Like Penn State, who I talked about, disaster. Why didn't you get Bob Chesney, Pennsylvania native? Penn State's a better job than UCLA. Why couldn't you get him? And that, if you're saying like, oh, it's too big of a risk, you've hired nobody. Like it would have been better than this. So UCLA, I also think, got a coach that should have gotten a better opportunity. Like if I'm Chesney, I'm sitting there. No disrespect to UCLA. No disrespect. Might sound disrespectful though. Are you better set up to win at James Madison or UCLA? I would say James Madison. They might make the playoff this year. You can recruit Virginia players who don't go to Virginia schools. You'll be probably similar talent level to UCLA's roster. Like right now, you'll be winning the Sun Belt a lot of years. You'll get that G5 spot. You'll get more promotion, more public appeal if you make those playoffs and then set yourself up for a better job down the line than UCLA. So I didn't even think Chesney should have taken the job. But the fact they did and you got him in the building makes it a great hire. So while that sounded like me bashing UCLA, I'm actually giving you credit for pulling off something I didn't think you were going to be able to do. I'm very impressed. And then let's move on to number 5, which I've got Jon Sumrall going to Florida. Now I know Florida fans are going to be disappointed that you didn't get Lane Kiffin. Of course you wanted him. He was a big name. He was going to win the press conference. But guess what? Winning the press conference isn't always the biggest thing. And I know you're scarred from the Billy Napier, Louisiana G5 head coach takes the job, and Jon Sumrall is Louisiana G5 head coach who takes the job. I understand that, right? But Jon Sumrall has now been successful at 2 spots. He was successful at Troy in the Sun Belt. He was successful at Tulane in the American. So he's a bit more of a track record than Billy Napier had. And look, G5 coaches, not every G5 coach is Billy Napier. Jon Sumrall is not Billy Napier. I think you're going to recruit really well. He's already made some waves in recruiting. And look, he's just a really good football coach, and a lot of people think he could be a great hire. I also think he has the potential to be a great hire. But Florida, how do I say this? I guess with all the reports coming out, because they were pretty vague, nothing gave specifics about like why Kiffin didn't look at it as good of a job as LSU, but it seemed like there was a consensus that Florida wasn't quite as good as these other programs in terms of what they provide. Now, I didn't get enough specifics into what those are, but it's enough for me to question like, okay, is it not as well set up to succeed as I think it is? Because when I look at it, geographical hotbed for recruiting, premier brand with a good history, who's had a lot of NIL investment, who's recruited well, and has really just been like, okay, you had all the talent. You had DJ Lagway, 5-star quarterback. You have also NFL talent, but Billy Napier's play calling was really questionable and situational football was not good. It really did look like just a coaching problem, and you switch that out for Sumrall, who seems to be great at this stuff. Like I could immediately see the massive upgrades, but why was there such hesitation from Kiffin? Why were they not really even in the running at the end? That stuff kind of made me drop it just one spot below and actually put at number 4 right here, Lane Kiffin to LSU. And I think a lot of people I think would have this higher than me. And if you ask me, okay, 5 years from now, one of these coaches has won a national title out of the 14 on this list, right? Who are you going to pick? Yes, I would say Lane Kiffin. I think he has the highest ceiling of any hire made this cycle. But we also know that that floor can be low. The messy exits can happen. And when you're bringing in Lane Kiffin, who has the drama and the way it ended at Ole Miss, you are setting yourself up. Because I would also ask you, if in 5 years you say some coach has, or in 3 years, some coach has been fired because of off the field antics, or the personalities didn't blend, or there was some weird story socially, like all that stuff, you'd be like, oh, it was Lane Kiffin, right? Something went awry, and you fight with the governor could even happen, right? Use tons of crazy possibilities for what could happen when you send a guy with as much personality and as much of a character as Lane Kiffin into LSU, where we have the governor involved in coaching searches, talking random politics. Like there's tons of crazy stuff going on at LSU with a crazy fan base, with crazy expectations, with a coach who's never been to a conference championship, who's never coached in a playoff, gave up his opportunity. Like, are we sure this is a great hire for LSU? Because I know I can see the ceiling. I can see national championship, but I can also see the floor. And while I think he will recruit really well, and if I had to bet on it, they'll be really good. They'll be very successful. But I wouldn't bet on them winning a national championship. And I would even go as far as to say, when you're competing with Alabama, when you're competing with Georgia, when you're competing with Texas, and what Elko's building at Texas A&M, all these programs, it is over a 50% chance. I would even say it's likely that in 3 years, we look back and we say Lane Kiffin's best chance to win a national championship was in 2025 with Ole Miss when they were the 6th seed of the college football playoff. That's what I think is the most likely scenario. So yes, could work out perfectly. I just don't think that's the most likely scenario. I think he's probably going to win a good amount of games every year. I don't think LSU is going to be the best program in the SEC. I wouldn't pick them right now to win a national championship in the near future. And I think, as LSU fans often are, they're going to have expectations that are off my screen, right? Off my screen. And they're going to get really good results here, but not quite as high as they want. And then things get sour. I'm just not as sold on this. I still, look, it's number 4. I give it a really good grade. I'm going to give it, like an A minus, maybe an A. I think it's a great hire. But I don't think it's as good as everyone else does. I just don't. All right, so let's rank the top 3 hires in this coaching cycle in college football. At number 3, I will go with Alex Golesh to Auburn. I think it's a really good hire by the Tigers because I think it fixed a lot of the problems they've had these past couple years. You've had some really talented teams. The defense has often been really good, but because of quarterback play, Jackson Arnold, Peyton Thorne, you haven't been able to improve the team. Well, Alex Golesh, that's not going to be a problem for him. Look at South Florida. Look at his Tennessee tenure. You're going to be innovative offensively. You're going to be pretty explosive, pretty fast. I think he will be very successful at Auburn. Now, of course, Alex Golesh, you probably are going to have some difficulties, right? Auburn is a really tough job, and a couple weeks ago, I talked in a video about the best jobs in college football. And one of the reasons I didn't include Auburn was because of some of the big challenges I thought they had administratively and also just in terms of competition. You're in the same state as Alabama, arguably the best job in college football. You're right next to Georgia. You have to play both those teams every year, and you have the expectations from a fan base to be on the caliber of Alabama, on the caliber of Georgia, and I think it's just not the same tier of job, right? So I think there are definitely challenges Alex Golesh will face. But when I look at Auburn and what they need, I do think you need someone with this innovative mind that Alex Golesh has to turn around the offense, which has been really struggling and you thought was going to be good under Hugh Freeze. It just hasn't been. I think Alex Golesh is the perfect guy for that. And Auburn's always going to recruit well. Now, will he be able to recruit on the levels of Alabama, Georgia, like getting these top 10 recruiting class? We'll have to wait and see on that. I'm not ruling it out. I'm not guaranteeing he will. But at the very least, I think Auburn will have a lot of talent. And I think he's a guy who, especially offensively, can maximize that talent. Now, he'll have to put a good staff around him defensively because South Florida at times has had defensive issues. But I think he'll recruit well enough, be good enough defensively that his offensive mind will carry the day for Auburn, and they'll be a team that's competing at least on the fringes of college football playoff spots in years to come. I'm not saying perennially, but I think people will look at Alex Golesh and say he's doing a really good job. And number 2, I'm going with Eric Morris to Oklahoma State for 2 reasons. The first, I think the Cowboys are batting out of their league here and got a home run slam dunk hire. I mean, look at his peers: Sumrall, Florida, Silverfield, Arkansas, Golesh, Auburn, all his American peers taking these arguably higher tier SEC jobs. He goes to arguably a lower tier Big 12 job. That is a steal. And then look at his track record. He was with Cam Ward at Incarnate Word. He was with Mahomes at Texas Tech. And now look what he was doing with Drew Mestemaker at North Texas. And he could also bring Mestemaker, bring a Wyatt Young, a receiver, to him. I think it's going to be an instant turnaround for the Cowboys. I expect them to be one of the most improved teams in college football in 2026. And look, I know Mike Gundy was there forever and he was wildly successful, but this team needed a change of pace. And look, when they first fired him, I didn't think this was a really good job at all. I wasn't sold on them being able to get an upgrade or really someone to take this job who I would be confident in. And boy, was I wrong. I think Eric Morris, I don't know if they could have gotten a better hire. I thought he was for sure going to go to a bigger gig. So yeah, just all around good things. And like I said, with the transfer portal these days, these programs can turn around really quickly. And I think he's in a unique position where a lot of his North Texas players, I would expect, are going to follow him. I've seen that before. We've seen that before. I would expect to see that again. There's already reports that Mestemaker would like to follow him. He's been great in his development. He's a young guy. So you have a quarterback of the future. Like I mentioned, Wyatt Young's a really good young receiver. There's other players players on the team that like right away could be some of the best players, like all Big 12 level players for Oklahoma State. I think we're going to see, because they were really bad this year, I think they might be the most improved team. Like, I can't overstate enough how much I like this hire. But at number one, I have to go with Virginia Tech hiring James Franklin. Now, look, I'm not saying Franklin was a perfect coach. He obviously had some issues at Penn State winning the big games. But you know what Virginia Tech would love? To be in those big games. He's already turned around the recruiting. And look, Virginia Tech's not a top 15 job in college football. Franklin is a top 15 coach. And while Penn State is falling apart, this Virginia Tech program is clearly surging. Expect them to be competing in the ACC, a conference with not a lot of powers. James Franklin's been successful everywhere he's been. He will continue to be very successful at Virginia Tech. They have the best hire this cycle. I mean, we can go back. Like, you think Vanderbilt, I know they're in a good spot now, but you think they would have liked to keep James Franklin if you told them, like, you're going to lose to, I don't know who Vanderbilt, like, you're going to lose to Tennessee every year, lose to Florida, but you'll have 7-8 win seasons. Like, Vanderbilt definitely would have taken that. Virginia Tech is not a team right now that's like national championship expectations. No, we're trying to get past bowl eligibility. If you're giving us 8-9 win seasons, they're going to be very happy. James Franklin is going to do that. He knows how to build a very good team. And given time, he will probably have Virginia Tech in ACC championships because, let's be honest, I think Miami's a great program, but in the ACC right now, Clemson's trending downward. Florida State, we don't know what's going on there. Like, North Carolina recruits well, but you can't believe in that right now. Georgia Tech, Louisville, like, they'll have their good years. Of course, I'm not saying the conference is bad. SMU, I should throw in there, right? Virginia, Duke, ACC title. I'm not saying there are bad teams. But let's be honest, it's different than having to play Ohio State's and Michigan a couple years ago and Oregon's now, or if you're in the SEC playing Georgia and Bama and who you want, Texas, right? There's a different caliber of teams at the top end of those where, yeah, you could say James Franklin can't beat the best teams. He's probably not going to have to play them a whole lot in the ACC. So that's already his main issue you could already take away. And if he just beats the teams he's supposed to beat, once he gets in a couple really good recruiting classes, which he's going to do, and make Virginia Tech one of the more talented teams in the conference, he's going to win the games he's supposed to. In the ACC, that'll make you a 9-10 win team year in and year out. And Hokies fans are going to be so happy with James Franklin. Now, with that being said, that is my full ranking, 1 to 14 of all the coaches hired or not hired this coaching cycle. Make sure to comment, what do you think of my ranking? Who's too high? Who's too low? Of course, it is just predictions and for fun. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll be back. Oh, wait. Not Sunday. I think we're going to do Monday show because we have to wait on, the selection committee. So my reaction and to the games and the selection committee's final rankings, I think is going to come out Monday. I'll let you guys know post if anything changes. But yeah, I'll definitely have shorts up reacting, but I think full episode probably going to come out Monday. All right, until then, I will see you guys next time.